software do you use with this?
Well, it was called Dr. Death, but Johnson Outdoors bought it.
Okay.
So if you look at Lake Master, you're going to see they'll talk about the new product
Okay.
that they've been talking about since ICAST. It was supposed to be out this fall, but like we know, it takes a little longer to get some of these
Right,
programs.
so after I go out in the fall, I pretty much got an idea where I want to start. It's going to be at last contact where I was out in the boat. That's where I'm going to drill my first holes. There are occasional migrations. If you do a lot of pond fishing locally, a lot of the areas off parking lots where that warm water rushes in, minnows respond to it. The stuff that the minnows eat respond to that warm water, and the fish are going to gravitate to that area. So the culverts that you see coming off parking lots, that's a really good area to try, during the season. And remember that clear ice plus the sun equals photosynthesis. If we don't have a lot of snowfall and the ice stays pretty clear, you can have green weeds all year. But that's one of the key areas that we do look for on a new lake is the green weeds. Green weeds always hold fish. It seems like everywhere we go, that's a pretty good blanket statement to say. So we're looking for the green weeds. That's the side image unit that we run with the bucket. We have some red tape on the one side of the T-handle, so as I'm spinning it on that bucket, once the display shows me, if you look on here, there's a crib that he's showing with the pointer, and it's really easy to, 30, 50, 70 feet away from me, I can drill my next hole right on that spot-on spot. This is some of the images that we captured. We were saying how they stick out like a sore thumb. You can see the crappie that are suspended out away from the tree. They look like little silver dollars out here. So when I go over a spot like that and I press the waypoint button, that little cursor comes up, I'm going to go right to that spot come ice season. That's a really high potential spot to try. And this is what we're hoping that we'll see with the AquaView when you drop the camera. So when you see stuff like this, and then sometimes they hold that tight to the cribs. You can ask us why cribs are important. It's just a cover item that they can move up and down in and feel very comfortable. Sometimes they're hiding right inside of it. A fish like this, it's going to take, a lot of the jigs, with their field of view, they're not going to see it all the time. So again, that's why we drill a lot of holes in a small area. You want to drop that jig, say in this area on that crib, so that he can recognize that as a food source and come out from where he's hiding. And a lot of times you lower that AquaView down here, and there's little pectoral fins. He's just sitting there, almost like in suspended animation. He's just like sleeping. And until you get something in front of him and start playing that cat and mouse game, he won't move. You can bump it with the camera sometimes, and they kind of look at that camera like, what is that? But they're just waiting, I guess, for the next meal to come on by. So it's pretty important. In some of the spots, we'll find crappie and bluegill mix. Some are just bluegills, some are just crappie. But when you see something like that show up, or a northern, it's time to move. Now, because I do fish on Shavano and Evergreen, and both have a lot of muskie in them, the best thing you can do is have a rod with some heavy line, try to get that thing to come over and peck at your lure, or try to sting it with a hook set. Because until he's done feeding, all the rest of the fish that you were sitting on aren't going to move, because they're food to him. Now, these are strike indicators. A lot of the rods that you can purchase from St. Croix have it built in. I'm very comfortable with this system. There's a host of them out there. You're going to have to get them in your hands and try them out. What I like about the St. Croix is when the line comes out, the last eye on my rod, the only part of that strike indicator that is touching the line is that little hoop, that little thin wire. So a lot of them with that spring assembly where the line actually runs through the spring, if you're out and you're not in a shanty to keep that thawed out, that builds up ice and eventually that gets stiff and you kind of lose the sensitivity to your spring.
I got an ice rod like that. You can buy those tips for the different sensitivities.
Right. Now Warner knows a gentleman from a club that he belongs to that makes his own. So by the diameter of the wire, more sensitivity or more stiffness. So there's several options out there, but if you guys are interested, we can show you how to put this on any rod you already own. All you'll have to buy is the hardware to do that, and then you can buy the springs to put on that. So you don't have to really buy new rods. You can get that system put on any rod you already own. And it's not that hard to do. If I can do it, you guys can do it.
Yeah, the other thing is, I think Clam and Frabill has come out with a titanium blank that you can pop on a rod too.
Right.
But now you're $14, $18, but titanium, in theory, should last forever.
A lot of guys that we compete against are still using schoolies. They're very proficient. The great thing about schoolies and why they're so good with that particular low-end reel is that it doesn't put line twist into your line. It has a nice size spool, so you don't have coil, and that line comes in and out straight. You don't have that lure spinning. A lot of times when you're actively working your tail and that fish comes up to look at it and you stop, a lot of that line twist is going to start coming out of that line. It's going to spin your lure, and that's an unnatural movement. You don't want that to happen when you got a fish staring at your lure. These eliminate that. When you stop moving, that lure is just going to sit there. It's not going to be still, especially with the wedgies. It's still going to quiver because it's almost impossible to hold that thing still. But the point is, you don't want that lure to make that unnatural spin. You'll see a lot of fish turn and move off because that's not a natural movement for a food source for them. Other options that have come out, now they have the inline reels here, so if you don't know what we're displaying here, you can go and check them out and see how that thing operates. You don't have that bail arm wrapping it on the spool like a spin cast. It's coming straight in and straight out off of that spool. It's not giving you a quarter turn of twist every time you turn the spool, or the bail arm. These are just some other options. Last year, we played with a lot of these. The only thing we didn't like, there wasn't enough relief. If you have a glove on, or my fingers aren't as big as some guys, I couldn't grab that reel and feel comfortable reeling it in. There wasn't enough relief there for my fingers to fit. Well, they do have ones now where you can take that close reel seat off and put that taller reel seat on there to get that space, so you can fish it with gloves or have that finger relief. So it feels comfortable when you're working it. These were new last year, but they have newer models. They also have these on display, so if you're thinking about purchasing one of the inline reels, they have them here. What's really cool about them is the amount of line that's picked up. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio like that schooling in the first picture. You have 13 inches of pickup with the Fravel. I don't know what the new model has as far as pickup. One turn of the handle, that's 13 inches. When you're fishing 20, 30 feet deep, and I think I mentioned at the beginning of the summer, we lost a lot of big crappie when we caught the big crappie to win that depth finder. We also lost a lot. I was using a very small bait caster. Where is it? That looked like that. Well, that arbor is probably thinner than my pinky. So when I'm cranking, trying to get that big crappie out, and that thing starts turning on its side, it was real easy for him to gain on me because I couldn't keep the pressure on the hook point. He was able to swim faster than I could retrieve, and he got off. So I lost a lot more fish than what we caught, even though we did get the big one for the tournament. I wish we could have got those 5 or 6 I lost, because that would have really put us out there.
What I'm passing around is this last year's Eagle Claw goes for about $30, and then they upgraded it this year. This one's about $50. And then this is the Maserati. This was 13 fishing 60-61. This is $100. So this one, these all what we found have your bigger arbor like a fly rod, so much bigger than those bait casting, and you're getting 15 to 19 inches per crank.
So if you're deep basin perch fishing, or again, I wish I would have sat through that gentleman's seminar that preceded us to see if that's one of those options that he would use to get to the whitefish. So you have a lot of line pickup. The advancements that are coming out in tackle nowadays, it just leaps and bounds, and it's really quick, and it's cool to be an ice angler now and see the tackle and reels that they're coming out with.
He was talking 30 to 34 inch rods and pretty stiff with a medium action.
But I'm just curious as the line pickup, because a lot of it is if you can keep the pressure on a hooked up fish, you land it.
He was backing off the graphite.
So back reeling?
Because it gets cold and it snaps it.
Okay. So a lot of the drags, now last year a lot of the drags we were walleye fishing, and I caught my personal best walleye with it, but a lot of the drags aren't really micro settings for your panfish. So it can go from being too loose and too tight in a very small range of movement. So you have to be conscious of that when you're setting it up for panfish. But as far as walleye, the whitefish, bass, northern, that drag is more like what you have in the open water season. So that range of adjustment, I wasn't happy with the range of adjustment for panfish. But they are an awesome thing as far as eliminating coil and line fish.
But you're going to see, has anybody got Facebook?
Yeah.
what you can do on Facebook is Aquaview Micro is one of the likes, and they're posting videos. This Wednesday, I clicked on the video, and it was a perfect one with line spin. He gets down, catches 3 fish right away, first 20 seconds of the video. Then the video shows the lure spinning, and it shows several fish missing now, and you see why your hook percentages goes way down. What we learned was to get the trophy fish. How does a fish get to be a trophy fish? He's a little smarter than the average bear. He's not going to hit a spinning jig. So that's why we had to go to these either schoolie or inline and fast pickup to lay it down straight and work. So kudos to the industry for listening to us.
Another option with the long rods, the line actually passes through the rod blank. This is a dynamite technique, gypsy fishing or hole hopping, say on Delavan or your weed flats. You don't necessarily need your depth finder. Once you pull out the appropriate amount of line, and you know the relation to the rod tip to the water surface, it's a preset depth. You're just going from spot to spot looking for the active fish. You eliminate the need for that depth finder. What's cool about this technique, when we were in the championship last year, it was raining. So a lot of guys were hunkered down inside their shanties. I was able to go through the shanty town and pick up some really decent bluegill just by walking through the group that was out there. But it's a dynamite technique. You don't cast any shadows over the hole. The fish don't know you're there. There's no clicking from your transducer to alert them to your presence. The only downside is you really can't fish any deeper than what the rod length and your arm, how high you can hold it to retrieve the fish. So it's just something, if you're a shorter guy, you're going to need a longer rod so you can get to those 10, 12-foot depths. I can get 12, 13 foot with that setup. A lot of guys that are shorter than I am just don't have that wingspan to work that. But it's a great option. There's no line twist. You pick that jig up, you're not retrieving it, you just pick it up, drop it down the next hole, and start working it. It's an awesome technique to fish for pressured fish.
Go back one time. Back to that. What you want to do, the technique on a long rod, is make sure you have your weight to go down to the bottom. Once you have the depth, undo your weight, lock your line in. You want to start at the top of the hole. A lot of times crappies are right under the ice. So don't just drop to the bottom. Start at the top and slowly work down. If you find that the fish, nice fish are at the top, put a bobber stop on there. So it's just, if you're a foot under the ice, put it there so you can stop to know, go down and up, because you don't want to drop below them and that. So those are two techniques.
Can you see that spring bobber from that far away?
Oh, not only can you see it, you feel it. You feel it. As soon as because of the way the line is and locked, you feel that.
Graphite transfers that strike. I mean, they're pounding it. And if you got the right technique and everything is working in your favor, it's very hard to miss the bites. They aggressively smack that stuff. These are some of the patterns that we use. This is more so for bluegill than crappie. Bluegills, I tend to use a lot of things that look like shrimp or little critter baits. Crappie will hit them, but I seem to do better with a minnow imitation for crappie and those shrimp patterns for bluegill. We still use the same tails. It's just that vertical versus a horizontal presentation. And we'll show you how we rig our tails. But this is some of the tackle boxes that we have, and depending on what they're hitting on that day, again, with that suit on, you have so many pockets, you can carry a lot of stuff. Just remembering what pocket it is might be troublesome after a while. Knot placement is important, especially after you catch a nice fish. You want to, if you don't have a way to secure that knot on that jig eye, just be conscious you got to change it. Get it so that thing stays horizontal. If you look at the display that Ron and Jeannie have out there, the way that those tails really start to swim is by keeping it horizontal. You want that to lay just right. If you have it laying at the wrong angle, it's just not gonna look alive to them. And a lot of days, as long as it looks like what they're eating, color and sometimes size isn't gonna be as important. But it does have that unnatural profile. There's too many things working against you to keep those fish interested in what you're putting down there. But this is Junior's Jigtails. He has sizes and colors that are just, you know, the options are crazy. So get out there and get them in your hands and look at them. What we like, there's a smallest size and then there's a larger size. The larger size takes some really nice crappie and it looks more like a fathead profile. So you got the pin minnows or you have the fathead. So depending on what lake you're fishing, what's the predominant bait source, you can match the hatch with the product line. Do we have time? I mean, we got a few more to go through.
It's up to you guys.
How do you guys, getting tired of sitting? No. Just let us know. And if we're running
Y'all
over.
want to
2
listen to
minutes
this, because it works really well.
Is it about fishing?
Yes, it's about the lures. They want to talk about their lures.
That's why we're here.
We're
I'll
not
let you guys
tired.
know that we started our business. We're Junior's Jigtails. I'm Jeannie. My husband is Ron. He's out in the other room. We make 55 different colors, all scented with black licorice and anise oil. We use, whether it's a painted jig head or an unpainted jig head, it doesn't really matter. We have found, but we also have found the lighter the tackle, the more that you're going to get that minnow look of our bait. We do start at an ice fishing size. We give you 10 pieces for $1.50 and $1.75 on our glow. We make 6 different glow colors. We're one of many companies that have expanded to 55 colors. Most people carry about 16 different colors. As Jim was saying, this is our fathead minnow, or similar to a fathead minnow. This is what we call a panfish size. And what we try to do with our tails is it's a triangle wedge, okay? And what we try to do, I didn't bring a hook with me in the room, but what you're gonna do is thread that hook through the top. You're gonna have that hook coming out the flat side, as Jim showed in his little video there, just to give it that vertical, you know, that way it lays. We do ice size, panfish size. I have a walleye size, which is a 3.5-inch tail, and I'll just keep passing these around. We also do bass size. We got a 6.5-inch tail, and anything you see can be made in the 55 colors. We're not, and if you have a special color that you're looking for, feel free to ask. My husband's not against it. This is our 10.5-inch musky tail. They actually take this tail down into Florida right now. They're catching mahi-mahi and cobia and stripers, throwing that up. And we also find that you can take that for your muskies, put it on as a trailer on a bucktail, your spinners, using it as a trailer. Yes, your hook will come out the flat side when you put it through the water. Because what we're trying to do is get that V to actually go through the water. And this is an all year round product. It's not just ice. We're in the spring, in the fall. We do it all year round with our products. So.
All right, so give them a look when they're right out here on the table. Give them a look, and they have some colors that are just phenomenal.
How many fish plastics in the ground? How many only fish live bait? It's okay. They both work. What I started ice fishing again 15 years ago, I'm 58 now, this May, is I was strictly a live bait fisherman. And they're catching it, they're swallowing the hook, cutting it, I put a new hook on, and that. Jim started fishing soft plastics before I did, and I met, I'm going to start saying I dabbled with them about 5 years ago. And what I'm finding is 90% of the time I'm now using soft plastics. And what's going to make you guys go from live bait to soft plastics is when you start catching more fish and bigger fish. Jim and I first start out on a new body of water. Jim's using soft plastics and I'm using live bait. I'm trying to figure out, do they want the live bait in this lake or that? And as soon as Jim starts picking up bigger fish and more of them than me, then I switch back to plastics. So that's why you want to experiment. And you can still put a little bit of live bait on your soft plastics. We see some of the guys doing that. The reason why I came to like JR's wedge is it's an engineered, it is a perfectly engineered triangle. And what I believe is when you properly have that bait horizontal, you're getting a vibration in the water, and that's also getting the fish's attention. No other tail that I've seen is a engineered wedge like this. And
Yes, sir.
Will that keep, I mean, that plastic wedge, will that stay like that, or does it?
If you look at the jig heads that you can rig it on,
You could do it on a football jig to just a ball head jig.
some of the collared jig options that you have keep it, you know, the right profile.
Yeah.
But if you,
I've caught fish when it gets miscued, you know, if it cants to
Yeah.
one side or the other, it will,
I
the
mean,
action is more what I'm.
I used the little ball heads.
Right.
right,
After you catch several fish, you might have to take a little chunk off of that lead part of it and get into some fresh material to keep it tight. But you will catch a lot more fish. This product versus a lot of other products, the plastic that it's made out of lasts a lot. It's more durable. So there's a lot of other ones from Custom Jigs and Spins that I use. I mean, this is one of our options, one of our main options, but there are other options that we use. Those baits don't hold up as long or for as many bites or fish that this one does.
You mentioned the custom jigs out of Corville, Iowa.
Yeah. You know, I use the Shrimpo Ratso's tails with the like 5 bubbles and a straight tail, but those get chewed up extremely quick. I don't get as many fish, and in a tournament situation, time is important. If I have to go into the pocket, pull out another tail and put it on there, where with this tail I can get 12 or 13 fish, and then the bite is off, I don't want to spend part of that bite, that hot bite, putting on another plastic tail.
I won't guarantee it, but I'll tell you guys, when you fish a minnow and you fish in your plastics, you're gonna get 5 to 1.
The plastic is a really good option. It just takes a little time to get the confidence in the product.
Especially with the minnow laws that are out here now, and you can't dump this and you can't dump that. It really is making a big difference in going into plastics.
yeah, the other thing is too, sometimes you find a hot hole.
Yeah.
So if we find a hot hole, Jim will catch a fish and I'll go right down his hole as soon as he gets out. I'll get a fish and get out, so
It's
sometimes.
just like when I'm guiding and you're on a brush pile and one of the clients pulls up a nice crappie, it seems like everyone reels in and they cast right where that guy just caught a fish. But through the ice, it's the same thing. You want to be as close to that hot, whatever has turned them on in that hole, you want to be close to that. You can't really explain why it happens, but I've had guys sitting closer than Warren and I right now, and all the fish are caught out of this hole, and nothing over there. Same lure, same line, and it happens too many times that you start pulling him out of here. If I'm fiddling around trying to get a hook out of a deeply hooked fish, he better be dropping down this hole to keep that school active.
Lake Michigan perch.
Yeah, same thing. But this is how we're rigging the plastics, be it a vertical scope,
Work with us up in Minnesota.
or if you have some of the scud patterns that are extremely productive, or the ants. I'll thread the lead part of that plastic on there, and I just try to be conscious that the point is covered. There's a dynamite presentation at Delavan for both bluegill and crappie. I just want to keep that point covered. It's not covered on that one, but that's basically how you want to have that rigged. Back in a quarter with you. When I'm fishing a horizontal for crappie, I'll go to a number 4 or number 5 Fisca, and I just want to be conscious that that thing is rigged right. And like you say, you can see here where they're chewed up a little bit. You can just nub off the lead edge of that tail and then put it back onto the jig and still keep that horizontal profile.
Do you have real good luck with the Mamuska?
If that's, I don't use Lamushkas. No, but if it's that profile, it isn't so much a brand that I'm using. We have some really good jigs that we use from Kodiak, a gentleman out of Michigan, that the colors, the tungsten, the weight is really what I'm after versus lead. The tungsten seems to load up my line and my spring bobber at a certain attitude. And when I start doing my cadence, and also that profile, that spring changes, I can read it because of the way the tungsten loads the line.
Tungsten is about 50%
More
denser
dense,
than lead.
right, so you can get a smaller jig but has, say, twice the weight.
Right.
So that's an awesome thing, the byproduct of the tungsten. So, and it tightens up here, so if you're fishing 4-pound line, the older I get, I'm having a hard time seeing 1 and 2 pound line anymore. So I've bumped up to 3 and 4 pound line. And it doesn't seem to change the amount of fish that we're catching. So it doesn't matter to the fish, and it's easier for me to tie, then I'm certainly gonna go into that thicker line so I can see and tie it. I already have the little device that you put on your head that has the light and the magnifying, the cheaters. You know, I just can't see the stuff. So we pre-rig, we'll carry, say, 8 or 12 rods out in a tournament situation. And when you look at the rod bags, most of the colors, they're the same. So that way if I break one off, I know I have 3 more rigged just like it in the bag. I'm not gonna be out on the ice trying to tie it again. We have 5 hours to get the best fish we can get. So I'm gonna set that rod down and just load up that bag with bad rods until the end of the day and re-rig them back in the cabin.
Yeah, don't get totally caught up with the tungsten. Lead still works.
Oh yeah, it's a different drop speed, and sometimes that's what they want. So if you have them both rigged up, you can go for that, you know, first couple of hits with the tungsten. If it ain't working right, you feel you're getting short hits, or you're getting hits but you can't connect, go to that lead. A lot of times when they flare their gills, if they can't get that thing to move, it's kind of like thinking of a cotton ball and a golf ball. They both occupy the same space, but the mass is different. So if you go to, you know, that fish goes to suck in that cotton ball, it's going to move. It's less weight. He goes to suck around that golf ball, it won't move. He can't get it into his mouth to eat it. And a lot of times those fish, they'll do what Tommy Gross from Henry's Bait and Tackle downtown, he described as a hydrolect. A lot of fish will come up and they'll just flare their gills a couple of times, getting the water that's around that jig, and they're tasting it. You know, they like the movement, they like the color, but they just haven't committed to hit it, so they're going to do a couple of tastes of it, the water that's around it. So a lot of the scent products that we use, the shrimp, the anise, the krill, so there's a lot of things like power bait or your gulp. That's what they're trying to key in on. So if they're hesitant and they come up and they do that hydrolect and they're like, ooh, you know, the pheromones are right, identify it looks like, I'm gonna eat it.
Now, Jim,
And that's
what
what you're trying to
don't
key
they
in on.
like when we're filling up the auger? in the
Gas.
morning?
They don't like gas. So be careful when you're filling up those augers. It only holds, say, a half a gallon, so you don't squeeze that pump real hard to fill that.
Or do it the night before so you
Yeah.
can clearly get it off.
So the reason he brings that up is day one, we did extremely well. At night, we went to fill the gas auger. We overfilled the auger. I mean, it splashed all over me, the power head. He was pretty much in the clear because it came at me. The next day, again, I'm the guy doing all the holes. I drill all the holes. Well, I don't drill with gloves on. So I take my gloves off. Well, all that stuff that was on the handles, on the power head, everything that I'm touching, I'm introducing gas on my hands. And then we didn't think about it until we do our lessons learned on the way home. We start thinking what we could have done, what we should have done. Did we move too early? Did we stay too late? We're thinking about it. I was like, I'm the only one that handled that gas-soaked auger. And it took about 2 hours before I got that scent off my hands during the tournament day. And he was whacking and stacking right next to me. I was like, it had to be the gas that was all over that power head that I was touching. You know, so it's something to be conscious of. Even with the anise scent that I was dousing on my hands, every time I picked up that auger to drill another set of holes, I was kind of eliminating that step of trying to hide the scent. So I was masking it, but not enough apparently.
So you're wearing latex gloves now.
And we're just more conscious when we fill up at night. Because when it happened, you know, he's like, oh, just give you a little squeeze. It just sprayed all over. This is another option that they came out with. One of the magazines that we had talked about, I think it was In Fisherman.
Yeah.
There's some little baits that they have out there that are somewhere in this area. That's the ice pick. I think these are the love nubs. I forget what they call these here. But that profile there, that young of the year profile, fish really love that. So if you know the color that is a predominant color on the body of water that you fish, and you can get it in that product line that they have, phenomenal. It looks like the young of the year, the small game fish or minnows that are swimming around down there, they respond extremely well to that profile. Another option is the spoons that we use for deep basin bite crappie. You probably possess these spoons. You don't have to go out and buy, you know, special spoons for it. They're on display out here in the store. Your 4-inch minnows, you know, the Swedish pimple line. I got turned on to a really good spoon from a Mountain Home down on Lake Norfolk. These they make a larger Baits Guide Service. Makes these for stripers. But he came out with a 1/16, and that's a really good, that scale pattern I think is what the fish are responding to. But that's one of my go-to spoons that I'm going to use when I go for crappie. We've dabbled with the Rapalas, you know, some of the other, I forget what the product line here, these were pretty decent.
Buckshot spoons or
No, I forget, Flicker Shad or something like that. But it was a pretty decent lure. I was talking to a gentleman earlier that a lot of the time, you're gonna be out there and everybody is exposed to the same lures, but you find that one lure that's a little bit different. You wanna be that first guy in the block trying it. Because if it's not you, it's probably your competitor or your buddy. So you don't have to, you know, sink a ton of money into it, but get one or two of them in your possession, work them, see what they do. Because a lot of times, being that guy with a very different profile or different look to your lure, the fish are going to respond to it. So you want to be that first guy that's going to try that, because sometimes that experimentation gets you the big fish or gets you more fish. Yes, sir.
Dick and I tie flies every Tuesday night together. Anyways, I mean, are you guys missing something here with the marabou tail?
You know, a lot of the marabou or a lot of the hair jigs that you use,
Yeah.
it seems to be more subdued in that real cold water.
Okay.
Now, if you have success doing it and keep doing it, I haven't seen my catch rate change by using them.
Okay.
So if it's working for you, don't let me talk you out of what you're doing.
I haven't fished them enough to really make an assessment.
When I put it in a very cold, I took a glass of water and I put it in the freezer and I let it get to where it was like, I would think, consistency of Jello, right before it was gonna freeze. Then I put that marabou jig in there and I was working it. It seemed like the fibers were really stiff. I didn't get like open water where you really see that stuff breathe.
Yeah.
It wasn't acting the same.
You need
I-
the colder water.
Right. Open water, it looks great. I mean, that's breathing, looks alive. Oh, you know, like a jellyfish swims, undulating. I thought, awesome. I put it in that cold water and it just didn't look the same. And I was like, well, it's, you know,
Cold water.
that was just one try. I mean, it could work. I just didn't spend enough time with it.
Cold water's more dense, so you
Correct.
get more flutter in the.
Right, it just didn't look what, I was trying to imitate a minnow, and it just didn't look the same, you know, it didn't like squeeze down, sometimes you squeeze all the air out of that marabou, you can make it look like the same profile as a minnow, it just didn't do that.
We're using in my class UV material. UV too, it's called.
That's new to the market, that you'll see a
Yes,
lot
it
of those
is.
magazines are talking about that UV. There's
Yeah.
some jig manufacturers that are coming out with UV paint.
What's your name, sir?
Warren.
Warren did, I mean, they're really talking about, it's a Spirit River proprietary element. They can dye it twice. And they can make it fluoresce, the actual marabou material. I mean, it's quite unique.
Right.
Well, we can't see it, of course.
Right,
Fish
it's a different spectrum of light.
sensitized.
Plastics, actually.
There's something about it that's, they're starting to use it in my classes where
You know, until we sit down with a fish and we ask them, hey, what does this look like to you? You know, you're never gonna know, but if you can try them, and if they work for you, then definitely keep it going.
The jig and spoon manufacturers have been doing it for a couple years now, so
have they,
They know there's gotta be some truth to it, because when they start putting their products to market, their research and development is gonna be more than what everyone here
Our
individually can
plastics
do.
are actually glow better with a UV versus the LED.
is that right?
Yeah,
Yes.
we'll talk about that in one of these slides here, and it is important, the spectrum of light, like you're talking
Yes,
about.
it
They
is.
see in a different spectrum than we do.
It being the smaller part of the spectrum.
Right.
I mean,
A different wavelength,
yes.
correct.
So we'll carry UV jigs, we'll carry glow jigs,
Okay.
and we'll have plain painted jigs.
Yes.
Each one may work better than another. We'll know that by Sunday.
Oh, really? Huh?
We have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday. For the
One in
championship, we have 5 days to figure out what the fish want for Saturday morning.
So you'll have to let us know next year.
There you go. Now, on my depth finder, we found these new lights. Besides just a camera flash, if you look on that light, there's a white bright light in the center, but there's that blue UV lights that are on the perimeter of it. So you're getting the best of both worlds with that one product. It's hitting it with the UV light that seems to make the glow brighter for a longer duration of time than just the white light spectrum. And you're talking about the blue light, the UV light spectrum, that's what fish seem to see better than what we see. So I don't know if you can see what it's done to the bait. I'll pass it around.
It's
Hand it
actually
again.
hot pink glow and
It
it'll
looks
glow
like a pink
orange.
tail, but it has a whole different
It
color.
glows orange if you
If
cup
you
it.
close your hands around it and look at it, it's a whole different, it's not the color you would think it would be
Right.
when it's glowing. It's like a different color than that pink. But they have a product out there, it looks like a little wallet that we wear from Rapala. It has the blue UV lights in it. You open it up, you can put your jig in there, you hit the button real quick, 2-3 second count, and now that thing's charged up, and you get several minutes, 10 minutes out of that one charge. And usually the fish has either hit it, or ripped it apart, or something before I have to charge it again. So if I hook a fish, I throw them in the bucket, I charge it again, I put it back down there. Sometimes you find that you'll get hits on a freshly charged bait. Sometimes it's after 5-6 minutes of fishing that you get the fish. So make a mental note, is it the dulling or the waning charge that they hit, or is that bright flash that they hit? Because sometimes they have a preference.
Yeah, you don't want to overcharge a jig. Too much light is a negative.
But most of the time, through the ice, fish are between a negative or neutral state, so be aware of that. You have these little brief periods where you catch a lot in a small amount of time. They're never really as active as they are in the open water. So be aware of that. Sometimes we'll put that camera down and they're not moving anymore, and you know you're on fish, you put the camera down, but geez, there's like 30, 40 more crappie down there, but they're not moving. Well, it's time for you to move. You can never make those inactive fish active, so you're better off, you understand that in their world, it's like swimming around in, pea soup or Jello. They're cold-blooded animals, You'll get that flurry where the really aggressive ones come up and whack and stack, but then after that dies, you're better off, save that spot, go to another spot, come back. So we've done better where we leave them alone 20, 30 minutes, come back, pull off a few more. You just cannot make those inactive fish active. We do use some tip-ups for crappie. Any of you guys on the south side, this is Wampum Lake. We put the same stuff down for northern as we do for crappie, and they respond to it. We've changed over to circle hooks. It seems like that resistance through the weeds as the fish are swimming with your bait sets the hook. So you don't have to rush, go to do that, Jurassic hook set with your tip-ups. They basically set the hook themselves. So it's a pretty cool technique for crappie. A lot of times the large golden roaches that we're using, this is similar to a dead stick. So when I'm out there doing my jigging, I just occasionally look back at my tip-up, the chance at a larger game fish. Don't worry, the big crappie will have no problem gorking some of those big fat heads or golden roaches that you put out there from northern. Just be conscious. I had a guy on the phone last night, and he was asking me about areas to fish, and I started rattling off a couple of lake names, and he's like, I didn't even know there were crappie in that lake. And I was like, that's one of the things as an ice fisherman, some of the lakes that we fish, you now have access to the whole lake. It isn't just shore fish. You can get out into the mid-lake humps, the basin bite, get out on that other side of the weed edge that you can't target during open water. So we're able to get out there. Just be conscious that some of these bodies of water, that small hole you see, until I had this big crappie come up, the bass, the walleye, some of the smaller fish will fit through that hole. Big crappie won't go back down a 5-inch hole. You get 15, 16-inch crappie, that's a good problem to have. But it sucks when he's below the ice and you can't get him on your side. But yeah, when you start seeing stuff like that come through a local pond, you have to be conscious to let these guys go and procreate, but boy, that's a good problem to have. Now this is one of those, we were on Crystal Lake, and we were right near the parking lot. Everybody is walking. I put this tip-up only because it was convenient to pick up on our way in. And that thing kept getting smacked, and we were catching walleye on it, and it was a very heavy traffic area. So guys are worried about auger noise or traffic noise. Didn't seem to bother the fish. And the bigger game fish, we want to make sure that you let those go. Without a lot of snow cover we get in the area, I'll do a little pattern like this with the slush that I drill out. That way it locks that tip up from spinning. A lot of times if you don't do that to your tip up, you can actually pull out line and it won't pay out. It won't operate the right way. So that way it locks that tip up in and it allows that whole tripping mechanism to work. But you'd be amazed sometimes some of the size fish that you pull out of these small ponds. And you get a bass like that on these little rods, 2 and 4 pound line. That's a good time. And just be conscious of what you take. You don't have to keep fish every time you go out. And remember to take your kids fishing. They are the future of the sport. So we'll stick around if you guys have any more questions.
I got 2 more things I want to touch on. One is the barometer. You're fishing for a couple of days. Life is good. Storm's coming through. The fish are active. But you got one more day. Bluebird sky hits. You're out early, you're catching some fish. And then all of a sudden, it's dead. Barometers down, bluebird sky day. We haven't done anything, we're cold, let's go into the bar. But what we have found on the tournament trail, we have to be done by 1. What happens is the sun creates a change in the barometer about 11:30, 12:30, and the fish become active again. So be cognizant, even though you're on a bluebird sky day and you think it sucks, sometimes Mother Nature creates another period, and we have found on a bluebird sky day, it happens again close to noon. The other thing we touched on was flies. When we're in Michigan, they've created something called the Michigan Rake. And what they're doing is they have a little jig down here, but they tie a fly on a blood knot that's only 1 inch off there. So don't try that. Go find some little fly fishing flies, black or scuds or that. Tie them off, but try to keep it within 1 inch of that. And
So it's like a modified drop shot, and they're doing that through the ice.
And sometimes I'll catch 15 to 1 on that fly. Other days I'll catch 15 on only one will hit. But I know it works in Delavan, and I know it works in a lot of other lakes. What we don't like to do is if it's in a weedy area where you're getting hung up. But if you got a pocket in weeds where you can get down, sometimes that fly you can play with red ones, the blood red ones, or natural ones, any little fly. But the point is, it's about 1 inch higher, and it's no more than 1 inch off the line. And it's light, and sometimes that thing flutters.
Are you talking a point fly that's on the bottom and a fly up more?
A jig on the bottom,
Yes, all right.
and then a fly up above.
How high above?
A foot, 16 inches, something like that.
Yeah.
And then 1 inch off the main line.
Yeah, it's real tight. You wouldn't think that they'd be able to suck that thing in, that they would see that vertical line, but for some reason.
Yeah, I tie a blood knot and leave along. Then I get my
Yeah,
jig.
it's really short, but the cool thing about it, when you do tie it right, is it sticks like straight out from the main line. So it looks just like a drop shot rig, and they have no problem whacking it. And whatever you're doing, as far as, everything you're gonna feel or read is on the weight of that bottom jig. So that little 1 inch, it's, you would think the longer is better, but that shorter one, it sees that is more productive. You get a lot of hookups with it.
Is, would a nymph
Yes.
work
Yes.
on that? Yes.
Yes, the nymph will work.
Nymph.
There's I call him Mr. Remember Green Acres? We got a guy called Mr. Haney. We go to Brooklyn to fish Wampers Lake. It's an hour outside. It's by the raceway. It's a beautiful lake. They got red ear sunfish. Well, the guy that runs it, he owns the whole town. He owns the biggest bait shop, sports store. Next to it is a wholesale bait, and he owns half the hotel that he wants us to stay at.
You know, it's
So,
kind of funny, you go to the one window and, I can't do that, you gotta go down there, and he takes that hat off.
okay, now I can.
It's like, geez.
But what we found there is they got that's where the schoolies guys came from. These guys are good. That's where Joe Pekulski lives on Wampler's Lake. These guys are good bluegill fishermen. There's a concrete worker that you can see, Barry Williams, that ties flies and sells them in that shop. He sells them online.
SpookySpiders.com. So if you Google that, you'll get to his website and see some of the patterns that he ties.
But
Spooky Spiders.
You'll see the best variety because he's been doing this for 15 years, tying panfish flies. But any fly shop around here, you'll find small flies that'll work. But if you really want to see a wide variety of well, he's got spiders, but he's also got flies. I think the spiders work better in open water, but the other things.
Say that again.
Spiders work better in open
Yeah,
water.
But I mean, the
Spooky Spiders. If you
Spooky
Google
Spiders.
that and look up Barry, it'll come up. You'll have your search engine, it'll kick out, all your options, and just look for that specific names be in the same little paragraph, and you'll get right to his website.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having us, guys. Thanks for sitting through.
Great.